Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta, and I'd like to talk to you today about how to take information from the social media platform Reddit and to extract not just information about the individual posts that are made here, but about the network structure in each communication. And that's really what we call sociology, which is why we're here at the subreddit for sociology. Sociology is all about the structure of interaction that creates contexts that affects how we live our lives and how the social world around us moves. So, what could be more fitting? What you can see here is a list of individual posts made by people who have different names with different topics, like book recommendations for a non-sociology major. And so we could click on that and we could read through the content here that describes what might be going on. So here's somebody who took an introductory sociology class last term and found it fascinating and wants to read some more books. That's great, but there's more than that going on here. There are people who are responding, someone who says, hey, you should read Berger and Luckman's Social Construction of Reality, this really qualitative foundational piece. And then some other people say, oh, read Irving Goffman's Stigma. So we're at a classics here, right? And then, some people respond to those and they say things like, I seconded this recommendation. So there's a pattern of communication and response that's really interesting. How do we chart that? So I want to show you how easy this can be. This is a copy of RStudio, which you can download for free. Just Google RStudio on your favorite search engine, maybe DuckDuckGo. And you'll find that it works with a base of another program called R. And you can also work with R through RStudio Cloud, available at rstudio.cloud. You know about this if you're a student of mine. Look at this difficult computer program. It has two functional lines. It has two green comment lines. These are in the upper left-hand corner. This is a script window. You would open a script window by going to File and New File, RScript. It's that simple. This is where you would type in the meat of a computer program that consists of just two commands. The first is to activate a package in R called RedditExtractoR. Now, if you haven't installed it already, you need to go to Tools and Install Packages. And then it goes to the internet to look for available packages, and you would type in RedditExtractoR. They always have the R be big at the end because they're cute. I've already installed it, so we won't bother to do that. And then there's a command. You wanted to study the subreddit, which means basically the bulletin board area about sociology. It's called sociology. You would want to use the command get Reddit, and then options go into an area inside parentheses. So the first option is to name the subreddit equals to sociology. And the second is to indicate how many pages worth of data you would want to go collect. For this example, we're just going to collect one page. That's like every time that you would go and click more, you'd get another page worth of discussion board information. We're just going to look at the information on the first discussion board because I don't want you to have to wait on this video for too long. Then we're going to save it in a temporary data set called a data frame on R, because there always has to be a different word for these things. And we're just giving it the unimaginative name called Reddits. Now, this is how you would go about, by the way, we run this by going to Code, Run Region, and Run All. This is how you go about getting individual level data. We see in the console We have a stop sign, which means we could click that to stop, but it means it's thinking. It's already a quarter of the way, 3/10 of the way through gathering this information. It's going to put it into a standard data set that is about those individual posts and comments to those main posts. And it's a great way to do content analysis. It's a great way to just stay current with the subject matter, among other things. But this is only going to be our first step. Now we're almost done. What could be simpler, right? And I'll be able to show you that data in just a moment. It will be available over here in the Environments tab. You'll see under Data, it indicates there are 260 cases, 18 variables. Isn't that wonderful? We can click here, and it will automatically open up a copy of this data set, which we can then save and work with as we wish. It will indicate the post date, the date of a comment. It will remind you where that was. Yes, it's on the subreddit Sociology. Who's the author of the post? Who is the user who's commenting? And then what is their comment? What's the title of the main post they're responding to? And what is the post text? Right? And then what is the comment text? So finally, it's got a link. This is a link that we're going to want to return to over here. It is the link to the main post itself that we might want to study in another way. This is a lovely data set to begin with, and you can use it for all kinds of study at the individual level. But what if you're interested in interactions? Well, one of the things you can do with this lovely data set is that you'll notice that there are a number of, because there are comments, these are organized by comment, you'll often see that there are a number of comments, different comments on one post. You notice this daily sociology discussion, what's going on, what are you doing, right? What's on your plate this week? We could look at who's commenting to whom and who's interacting with whom, right? And we could look at that for any one discussion. And to do that, we might take, say, this is also a nice feature here. We can triple click on this URL here and copy it, right? And now it's in our clipboard. And let's head over to a second script. This is going to look just a little bit different. It's going to use now two packages, our friend RedditExtractoR, and then a second one called igraph that is, we might not have to use it with RedditExtractoR, but it's always good when you run a network analysis to include igraph because it's the premium and primary mode for engaging in network analysis. So we might post that URL in right here, right? And then we might use a particular command within the RedditExtractoR, which is a combination of two steps. So here again, we have just a few more lines. We have a variable called myURL, and that's the URL that I'm interested in. And then it's going to say, okay, well, let's parse that into Reddit content for my URL, and then let's create a graph out of that Reddit content that it collects for that URL data. This is a way to plot out the social network of relationships on a single Reddit thread, which is pretty cool. These three basic commands after you just call up two libraries and say, hey, I want to use those. It allows you to run this code again very quickly. Now, what it's doing is loading that one post back up. You'll notice that there's a progress bar in the text on the console. Oh, and I have a little bit of an error. I think it may have to do with the fact that this is including a question mark, so I'm going to try that again. Yep, it did. That was a little bit of extra stuff that confused RedditExtractor, so I just reduced it to its basic content. And look at what's over here. We have an automatically generated network graph. And I'm going to recommend when we look at these, we don't look at the small bit over here in the plots area, that we click on zoom, because then we can see everything nice and sorted out. And what you'll see is a first round of comments to the author, Anomander, and then you see a second set of comments that respond to comments, and then a comment that responds to that secondary comment. It's a tertiary level comment. This is great if you are going to be incorporating some discussion of a particular topic in a class paper, if you're doing work in college, or if you're doing academic work and you want to talk about the structure of conversation and the tendency for some threads of discussion to continue while others kind of stop. This is really handy. It all even includes a nice title at the top to remind you of what title you are working with. This is really nice. As a matter of fact, there are some things you can do, which we'll see in the next step, that allow you to extend this a little bit further on. As you can hear in my voice, what I'm doing right now is just basically talking about this network graph, right? I'm talking, and it's a very lovely structure, right? That's emerging from the original author and including others later on down. But we could get a little bit more systematic about this, and I mean that in two ways. The first is that, of course, while this discussion is going on, there are other discussions that are going on this sociology subreddit simultaneously. How does this discussion compare to those other discussions? Second, there are some network properties that we can describe using, let's just use today two, the density of this network, that is how many connections there are here, as opposed to how many there could be. And secondly, what about the diameter, right? How far removed along these chains of commentary might two comments be from one another? That would be an indication of how long these discussion threads are going, and whether there's more than one of those. So those can be summarized in two numbers, right? Network density and network diameter. To do that, and to talk about a number of comments that are going on, or a number of commentaries and a number of discussion posts that are going on simultaneously in one Reddit thread, we can head over here to a third script. And in this third script, we're getting a little bit more involved. But let's start with what we know, okay? So the first part of what we know is the use of these two libraries, igraph and RedditExtractor, okay? We also know this command, the bit about the construct graph, right? So we're going to create pictures like this one that you see over here in the corner. And you also know this command here, which is to get current set, the first page of whatever posts are going on for sociology, and to collect those into a data set. But now we're going to combine those, okay, with a little bit of glue to connect them. So here's one thing we're going to do. If you look at that, Reddit is the name of that data set that we created, right? And you imagine that we want to be able to look at all these URLs and we want to be able to describe what's going on, right? So what could we do? Excuse me. One thing that we could do is, just go down through all those URLs. But if we do that, we've got 260 entries, and a lot of them are going to repeat the same post, right? And the network is occurring within a particular post. So we want to delete any duplications while not deleting the data set itself. So in order to do that, we're going to use a command here that's going to create this temporary place to store a list, and I'm calling it unique Reddits. Okay, that's what I'm calling this thing that I want R to remember. Okay, it's a variable that I'd like, a list I'd like it to remember. And what would I like it to consist of? Well, I'm going to use the arrow to say, this is what it's going to mean. And what it's going to mean, it's going to be the stuff on the right. It's going to use the command unique. And it's going to take this data set, Reddits, and it's going to look at a particular variable within it. The $ here is nothing special. It's just, who knows why they picked the $? They could have picked something else. They could have picked the percentage sign. They could have picked the, the little pipe thing. They could have picked the question mark. No, they picked a $. The $ means that what's coming next is the name of a column in the Reddit's data set. What column? The URL column that we were looking at that has those links. Okay. Then what we're basically going to do is something in computer science land that's called, it's a for loop or a do loop. And what it means is that we are going to say, given a certain set of circumstances, first of all, that we're going to be looking in the list unique Reddits, and we are going to be looking at every row, and we're going to call that row I. So I is going to be the value in each row. What's the value going to be? It's going to be a link. What are we going to do in the next line? We're going to create a graph, just like we did before, but this time we're doing it for every row, right? These little squiggly lines here in line 14 and line 19 mean for every row, we're going to do everything that's in between the squiggly lines. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to load up for each row the graph. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to give that a line number, right? Okay, so that's basically a row number, and we're going to call ln. We already set it to 0, and we're going to make it increment. We're going to have it go up in value every time we read another row. That's nice. So every row will have a number. And then we're going to create a vector of values. First one is going to be the address, the web address of it, okay? And that is going to be set to the value I, which is the web address itself. Then we're going to have it do two things. Calculate the network density using the network density command for igraph, which is edge_density, and have it calculate net diameter. That's just the name I'm giving it. And it's a vector, so it's going to have as many values, sub-values of that, as there are rows. For each row, it's going to calculate density, and then it's going to calculate diameter. And it's also going to have a column in there that is going to have the web address so that we'll know how they all line up. Isn't that nice? And then we're going to save it all those three values, right there, in a new data frame that we're going to call net properties. Okay? All that happened up here, by the way, is that we initialized some vectors so that R knew what it was working with. That was a little bit more complicated, but you'll get to see how it works in just a second. Let's go back to run region, and let's try running all. And by the way, and before we do that, let's clear everything out so we can look as if we were just working from scratch. And we'll do that in the environment area by using the broom and the plots area. We'll clear all the plots so we can see what comes up fresh. That's always nice. And in the console, you can clear that by hitting Control-L or under Edit, the command clear console. Okay. It's just nice to be able to see what comes up as something fresh. Let's run it. Let's see if there are any errors. There usually are one or two that you have to work through, and that's okay. That's part of programming. But I'm going to run this, and let's see what happens. So now it's thinking, right? There's that stop sign again, which shows us that it's thinking. We could stop it if we wanted to, but right now it's 17% through, 22% through. It's gathering that same sociology subreddit information, unless someone just posted something new on Reddit in the sociology subreddit, which would be cool because I like sociology. We're just, as I've spoken these few sentences, we're almost halfway done, which is lovely, over halfway done. And then when it's finished, we'll continue to look in the console to see what's going on. Now I'm going to maximize the console so you can see what's going on. You can use that, make it go big and small by hitting these little buttons in the upper right of the window. I didn't make anything go away. I'm just making it bigger. We're already at 83% done, 87%. It's like watching popcorn pop, either boring or exciting, depending on your personality. Okay, and what comes next? Now it's going through each of those discussions, and it's generating a lovely network image. It's saving those in plots, and you'll notice that there is a blue arrow that appears that allows us to cycle through back and forth between the plots. So they won't disappear, I promise. That's important, right? And it's continuing to go. We know that because the stop sign hasn't gone away yet, but it's really churned through a number of them very quickly. Oh, and check this out. Now, if you wanted to talk about the different kind of discussions that are happening in the sociology subreddit, the things that people are talking about sociology online, and which ones are generating a lot of discussion, a little discussion, one thread of comment, many threads of comment, you've got the pictures here. It's almost an all ready to go slideshow of the current moment in sociology. Oh, and look, there's the last thing that it's done, which is to create a set of net properties in a data frame. Now I'm going to make the console a little again so we can see the script again. These plots are all available for you to look at. Here's one that was a really short one. Sociology homework help thread. Only one person posted that one. That's not a big one. Here's an interesting structure on the idea of respect or reverence for women as a cultural norm. Oh, that's very sociological. Book recommendations. Yeah, cool. Why don't people take queer studies seriously? This is a big discussion, right? Lots of commentary going on. Woo! Big, big, big comments going on. You know there's something there you want to look into. Software use in sociology. Oh, I love it. Determinism. Oh, isn't that a nice structure? Okay, I could talk about that all night. But what I also want to show you is that in addition to those images, this little program, which you can write up very quickly yourself, has now a data frame called net properties. And it has in it, it shows us that there are 23 entries, right? And each of them has an address, and then each of them has a calculation of the density of connections in them. You can see there's a variation. By the way, density is a value between 0 and 100. I'm sorry, between 0 and 1. And if you multiply it by 100, it indicates the percent of possible ties that could be there that are actually there. And some of them are quite dense. So to say that a third of the ties between comments that could exist actually do exist, that's a really dense network. Some of them are a lot less dense. If you multiply this number by 100, that is 1.6% full. And That very sparse network, however, has a large diameter, which indicates that that is a really interesting one to look at. And so, we can even, move the address bar a little bit to the right and find out which one is that. It's one about, does going to a ranked school affect something? Affect what? Your future as an academic. Look at that structure there. Again, we could zoom it up. Okay, so we can begin to consider the pictures of this discussion. Clearly, this is a big and important discussion for some people who are interested in sociology. We can look at the metrics, the network characteristic of this beautiful network. It's a bigger network, and one of the things we know is that bigger networks with more discussion points, more comments, by almost a mathematical rule, tend to lead to lower density. So we can't do more than talk about this on R. We can start to right-click on the images, and by doing so, we could save them. I could save this here as a PNG file, and then I could incorporate that in a presentation. And these net properties, this data set here, we're not so lucky to be able simply to right-click there, but I do see here a save, right? And we can save some things there, right? What I like to do to save things is to use the excuse me. I just had a little bit of a hiccup. A command that is called write.csv. And write.csv is a command that when you put things in parentheses, it'll ask you, well, what do you want to write? I could write, well, I want to write net properties. Okay, and then I would put in a comma, and I would type in the address on my computer, like literally the folder, and then the name of the CSV file that I would like it to be named. I would type that in, and then I would run that command, and it would save it as a CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated values, and that is an Excel openable spreadsheet, or a Google Sheets openable spreadsheet, or a Microsoft Access openable spreadsheet. Or you could add it to your MySQL database on a web server somewhere if you wanted to. A CSV is a great way to store databases in a way that can be translated easily from one program to another, for whatever purposes you might have next. These are the possibilities that are open to you thanks to the folks who brought you R, thanks to the folks who brought you igraph, and who brought you RedditExtractor, these two packages that add on to R to allow you to characterize a network, that's igraph, RedditExtractor, to take this information off the net, which is already public, so you're not invading anyone's privacy, and looking at the structure of it, the context in which these important discussions might be happening. Your dream Reddit subreddit might be different. What you want to study might be different, so go ahead and study that different subreddit. It's a great place to study conversations. It's a place where conversations, both heated and cool, still happen. So go to it. Now that you have these tools, there's a lot that you can do.